I'm sorry, the person you are trying to reach has a voicemail box that has not been set up yet. Please try your call again later. Goodbye.
Okay. So while we're waiting for Happy Face to call back, I'll read from the text message that I received from him. Some subject is about contraband, meaning the sale of goods unlawfully obtained. Questions: can a dead man make a ruling from a bench when that act is the cause of security risk, insurance to be failed, if that's the notes passed on which has purposeful omission to be evidentiary fraudulent, as a violation of oath under the Sixth Amendment. Let's see, what's the Sixth Amendment here? The Sixth Amendment: in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation. What's the Sixth Amendment in simple terms? The Sixth Amendment guarantees the rights of criminal defendants, including the right to a public trial without unnecessary delay, the right to a lawyer, the right to an impartial jury, and the right to know who your accusers are, and the nature of the charges and evidence against you. Okay. Okay, is a layer of subject matter best to mostly have things in. Okay, so that's where he's talking to me. Win your case upon conditional acceptance by not contracting. Become a page, private awakening general. First series. Oh ho. First series. It's like a collectible item. It's what's lovable. Keep in mind, it's called liberty. It's also called a jubilation. It's about a new epoch. Let your audience know. Should we do this in bite sized chunks or make it a class to cut up? Let's see if anybody's in the chat. Okay, here. Chat. Hmm. Alright. Let's see here. Conditional acceptance. Okay, I know what that is. Okay. So, dismiss charges for errors of omission where the statute of fraud is evidentiary by knowing about a private side and a public side. Okay, so we're going to look up evidentiary. I'm thinking it has something to do with evidence. Evidentiary is something that has the characteristics of an evidence and qualifies as evidence. Similarly, evidentiary hearing is a hearing in which only the evidence is recorded by the court. let's see. I know that I've seen.
Show the crowd this way. I'll just roast the screen. Show the crowd this way. I'll just roast.
Pause that. Okay, here we go. Hey, happy face.
Luke, how you doing, mate? Yeah, good to connect in with you today. Yeah.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Um,
I
I would be
appreciate that.
good for us to start the P.A.G.E series, like a private awakening general, which is typical that somebody in the past was someone who could go across all the jurisdictions and they could shift something because they knew, where jurisdiction is. And that slowly became something not too taught, which really comes from a couple of issues which we could talk about today. Yeah,
Yeah, that
but
sounds really
it's a
cool. The P.A.G.E
beginning.
series.
Yes. Also, too, I think it's wise that perhaps these are put into 20-minute segments, probably,
For sure.
at each one. Yeah. So we might do some tonight. Well, let's see how we go. Anyway,
Sounds great.
but so really, how to win your case, really, and do that with honour and care by understanding the whole circumstance and by going about things more as a mendicant does. Yes, so it's a different attitude. It really is caring about people on both sides of the fence, not making worse more, but caring as one of the people should. Yeah, and so
Definitely.
someone could win their case by having an adverse counterclaim because you're building credit for those that are interested. Yes, and otherwise, then what's the reason? You see, where something is, someone should be for hire where they are, which you are, because your substance is worth something. And so an approach can be where someone's substance really is worth something versus where's your substance, it's been taken away, and where's your liberty, that too. And so those are things which a P.A.G.E, a private awakening general, is pretty focused on. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, so let's see how we go. So basically, could you say that everything is really an error of omission, actually? Yes? And you're the one where anyone is, and you're expressing things yourself, and you'd be cared that things go proper as they can. And with a phone call or with a piece of paper, you've dealt with everything. Because you've done that on a simple level versus it's not complex. It's just so what you learn as a private awakening general is that things are very simple, yes, and it's like accounting. So it's sort of really only one-page types of things, really.
Okay.
But everything is in there, you see. So what we've said, we could highlight. We've said, like, hey, win your case. We've said, it's an adverse counterclaim always. Why is that? Well, because that's what's arisen as a result of something probable. So you have to think about things in the terms of what's occurred. And there's battles or bats, which are the boundaries between where jurisdictions sort of merge and things that's like that, meaning that jurisdiction means the subject, meaning the harm, the standing that you have, and what the standing is about. That's what that is, simple. And venue is what's been missing a lot. So it's really subject, jurisdiction, and jurisdiction relating to what venue where something is. And so these are things which we're going to get cleared up a bit probably in our talk today. Also that
Awesome.
you're putting things in terms of what's private versus public. Yes. So if something is private, that's for you. That's you're just dealing things privately. Why shouldn't you do that? That's very important that you do, because the matter where something is, you don't want to complicate things by bringing that, making some public issue about something where something has to be fought about, which doesn't have to be. Yeah.
I see.
Yes, of course. So where everyone is, you're being given back your liberty, which should be, and in a new epoch, a golden ages, and you and I, everyone, we help correct everything. So before we start, you might ask yourself, like, which I've always asked people, which it's really good. I ask everybody, do you know who's in charge? Everybody, they laugh so hard when I've asked that because they know that that's a funny question to them, really. So if you if you ask that anywhere, of course, people will laugh like crazy because they know nobody knows the answer to that, or they're trying to figure out who is. And somebody points to someone and they think that person is, someone else is, or this is, or that is. But it's very important that you would know that that's not something which should be wise known. It is, because it's actually why you've got mayhem. You've got an administrative council which sits above the legislative assembly of a state, and everything is dependent upon this, which is this administrative council. And you'd have to know who is this administrative council. Yes, it's we the people.
Oh.
And so everyone below that says they have we the people. Why? Well, because did we do anything about what we saw? No, or maybe we didn't even know what to do, you see? So being a private awakening general, you're doing what you can to protect everybody in government and protect everybody and their family, and protect everyone, period, utter. And it's not your business to harm, injure, cost or damage whatsoever anyone, and not put a burden upon another soul when there's no reason to do that. Why should it not be that if, as it is, you would insure people to make sure things are insured? Now you're speaking more, like the king would, and or the queen, or a baron or baroness, or someone with some title. But the highest title is man or woman. That's the highest title, you see.
Wow.
So you could win your case because you've got an adverse counterclaim that came up where something was. And we'll talk a little about that. I think it's very important that people could pay attention, and get your pen out a little bit, and because you could take some notes and you could help people where they are, because it's truly important that we could understand something is going on. And because there's two venues that have been confused over the top of each other, it's sort of really a grey area in between where that is, where a lot of harm, injury, cost and damages. And if we don't do something, of course, because of it, these errors of omission, everybody's properties all getting lost, you see, yeah? Yes, it is.
Okay.
We can see it is. You can see it is. And so we all should be talking more about this, because most people are really not knowing that something could exist for themselves, that they could be winning their case, that they could do things more in the private, and they could be protecting the Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment is really to be, securing your process and have a proper process and be guaranteed that your procedure and your process is proper, you see, yes? Because
Okay.
you have a right to know. If you never saw a claim and you said, show me the claim, what's that mean? It means maybe you haven't seen it. Probable, yes it is. It means you haven't seen the claim. So one has to rebut things, but basically we're going to talk about a way to go about things, because you would care to be very honourable in the way that you go about things. I mean, you can and you should, and why not? Because that is admirable, as though, yes, it is. And it's sort of a bit of a take on where other people could have thought a word is. But it's that where systems are existed, one is that you're from the land, and that crimes that's occurred to you happen from the land, and so you're using the word from in your verbs as a mendicant and as a page. And so you're looking for errors of omission, and you're going to put this in terms of something which really is an offer, because anybody and anything that was an offer to you, and there's always a way for you to settle something by giving an offer, and you don't have to contract, and you haven't accepted that somebody contracted to you because they didn't, but you could see that they didn't because something has existed in what you said or did that showed such, in fact. And so it's like learning the whole set of something, suddenly you can see just what quite easily could be done where anything is. And so basically it's errors of omission, and you're wanting to correct things, or you're just pointing out that there is errors of omission, and that's how you win. And so it's an understanding as we go through this in a little bit of trust law, tax law, and accounting, basically. And so having some insight into this and venue and jurisdiction that it relates to the private and public.
Okay.
And so private and public is what's to be put, and this whole process is what's common, and what's common is for you to be of some common parlance and practice, and you're doing things what's ethical because it's like time worn and seasoned how you would have something. And typical it is that if you hadn't seen a claim, why wouldn't you say that you hadn't seen a presentment? Or if you had seen something, you didn't see a claim, there is to be said that you didn't see a claim. That's important because that has to be put. It must be able to be clear. Something must be settlable. And so where anybody is, because venue could have been not selected, which you've the right to do that in the Supreme Court, wherever you are, by selecting this, because otherwise you've got corpus delicti behind the picture. But when you say supreme, it means that you're subpoenaing everybody to come into their living self, where the matter is, in a counterclaim, which you pick out a few things and stuff which somebody cares to consider as we're going, right? And we'll go through this first little bit, and then we'll go to the next bit. But what we're doing is just giving you the basics of what is the essence of your winning your case. It's being on the private side, not bringing things into the public, which is the commercial, corporate laws and things and such. And a mixture otherwise then comes along. That's a colour of vice admiralty, where you're only a corpse as a dead man, basic, and fictional, on a fictional level, meaning that you have a fiction that you own on your private side. That's how you feel. That's the feelings that your family have toward you. That's your property. That's their property, and that's exclusive to you. That's not for someone else to jump in on. So first it is, and a page learns that something is original, and then something came to be separated or abandoned in some way, or taken away. And so now where something is taken away means something really has come in there and caused something to be. And so now we're talking about what that is, but we've to focus on the nature of things, which if anybody has listened to the first few podcasts that we did, they could be knowing more about the nature of things. Okay, so it's really the nature of things is knowing that there is a private side and a public side, and that on the private side you've got an operation more going on, more under common law, and so all the courts in nations have actual common conditions, which is what and how things are set up. And we do for sure, because we have an administrative council, which, because nobody's there, that's where the people, you've got a muck, and that's sort of people get collectively punished because they're not in charge where they are, and having to be regulated on the outside. And this, what you're learning about, is totally being able to be regulated more on the inside. And this is what an alliance of law movement is, which is called ARM. So they have so you've got venue from the land, which is higher than venue from a corporate world. The venue from the land is more is and more real, a real true noun. So it's only one word which describes your name, like Jubb David, for instance, in lowercase. So, and you're always, when you appear, you've already selected the venue because you're putting it in the Supreme Court, and you're putting it into a venue where you have jurisdiction, or otherwise where you are, you've had to appear somewhere and you're inside some other case where something is, and then you're appearing by special appearance, travatus inter venus. And you can have got things done there by letter of an interrogatory, which is simple for you to have done, and it's a presentment on behalf of someone else, and that's what you're challenging, because whatever went on, somebody made a presentment on behalf of someone else, and not you, and so that's a bit of a problem, because where's the principle of the matter, which is you, but you're given to be the principal, but by accommodation behind the scene, you're then put to be some presentment where they've given the presentment, actually not you, and they've done that on behalf more of themselves, not you per se, but they've done that for you instead. And this is sort of a dead man. It's sort of like fictional, on a fictional level. So there's a simple way you and I, we can clear things up, because you're using English and you're just using words, and that's all that you need to do. And you could be in your own clothing, of course, which is a suit, or you could have been in someone else's suit. But if you've got some claim, well, you could be in your own suit, but you could be where something is, and it behooves you to be able to use the channel where you are, and you can. And so it's up to you. You can do things, but you have to actually have a counterclaim. And so now you're changing things around, but you have to actually get this by using an interrogatory. That's an acceptance. And so, first, what are you doing? You're doing a conditional acceptance, upon proof of some claim. Okay, so that's what it's called. You're really doing an acceptance, a conditional acceptance on proof of claim. Okay, so you should write that down. Isn't that nice?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Beauty.
Right. Okay. So now because you're not having an issue personally, that's wrong. That's just not right. How can you be there? You know, somebody has to be in the kitchen who can work where that is. Otherwise, yeah, okay. So if you're making a presentment, somebody made a presentment on behalf of somebody else, and that always could be very problematic, which we'll talk about just in a moment, because it involves security risks, which is breached, because various things it comes to be securities, because the notes which are kept and supposed to be passed on may not be a common law court of record trial by jury, which is a true testimony, but otherwise then it isn't. And so it's not a court of record. It's minutes and things. It's like this. But somebody can get things done where something is, and it's what the level of something is that something is itself. But everything is like somebody has given you something. That's an offer. That's what that is. And so how you respond is your offer. And to clear things up, one could say some belligerence was because one didn't know what to do. Good. That's a reason. Good. So now you could say, but I have giving everybody a fair warning that, this is what I've come to be aware of, that I wasn't given any benefit. You see? Yeah? Okay, well, that's right. You probably weren't. But something exists which you're correcting, which is really the correcting the errors of omission, which relates to the nature of how something has arisen as a cause of action, and that nature of how something has arisen relates to where did this happen? Is this happen to you from the land, or is it in a corporate world and it's about something or something? But NREM means that it's about the thing, and so you have a property interest in the thing. That's what that means. So, you're doing a conditional acceptance on NREM. So you're doing a conditional acceptance on proof of claim, and you're really asking, where's your authority? You see, because that's what's going on. It's like, where is your authority? The chain of authority where we are is from this administrative council that sits above the legislative assembly, and if you and we haven't acted, that's the enemy, honest. It's wild. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the wildness that's going on, which should be corrected, you see, but because you and I, all of us have just sat back and we're not engaged where the fourth estate is, this is the fourth estate. This is what you're talking about right now, what we're talking about, and what you're learning about. And so it's the ability to know who is real and what is real versus what is illusional, okay? And what is fictional instead. And so basically, you should speak for yourself as anybody else would, and nobody could take that just away automatically for you. And that's kind of the thing which is going on, which really isn't right. A real true name is just one word. That's a real noun. That's a real noun. And a real noun must describe you. It can't be words that are put which are fictional, which of course you could. That relates to some fictional self, but you shouldn't be using a fictional name when absolutely you're supposed to be using a real true name. And you could and you should, and wisely, but if you haven't, it's sort of slaved out, and that's a modern form of slavery. So you learn how to do a proper postal. So now, it's really what you, and where you've domiciled yourself, and before you ever got anywhere, it's probable that you wouldn't have got anywhere, but you could, and wisely cleared things up, because it's that what's non-judicial, or meaning it's under a corpse. It's really because it's often a confessed judgment, meaning somebody made a confessed judgment, but how did that confessed judgment get there? Because somebody felt that wasn't right for themselves. Somebody else did that for you and took you right away where something was. Well, this is very important what you're listening into, because what's gone on there is somebody by the process has sort of gone into some default itself, because they've abandoned some principle which we or you should have, and it's granted and given to you. And if that was not dealt with, you've got abandonment and you've got separation. You haven't actually fixed anything up, which you can, and we can. That's what it's wise that people could learn, how you could fix things up. And so something was so now in the circumstance where you're born, of course, something is whole, and then something is all of a sudden put, so it's abandonment, meaning separated from you and taken away in some way. And now someone, because of that, there are always where circumstances, somebody could have some confessed judgment because a form of a subject matter jurisdiction could be being used, and you wouldn't have known what that was, And so this is also an error of procedure. So right at the top of your papers of any nature, you always are going to explain something which you've not, you don't have any abridged rights whatsoever. Your rights are unabridged. And every avenue of protection under the government that you have available to yourself, it should be given and applied. Okay, so if you're not, so somebody should be subject to free and clear and have clean hands where some transaction has gone on past the point of it. And so this class, just this first little bit, is really just explaining that contraband has been created because of it, because it's really by jurisdiction only. Certain jurisdictions that could look over certain securities, because everything comes to be a security. And the notes that were passed on, if error was, they often never passed on with the title, which is supposed to be a security. I mean, so that's sort of a grey area which is going on, which has made allowable a lot of things, and we the people should, at the administrative level, clear these sorts of things up, because if you don't, you've got a statute of fraud, and you might write that down because that's what you have, and that's really should be up there where your front page is, because it's explaining the error of omission really is a statute of fraud, which is evidentiary. And so it's possible for us to explain just a little bit, of course, completely more what this is about. But basically, you know, in the public, privately, something was taken, your BC bond and date and bonds and social security bonds that links to what this is. And someone could really learn more how to see that a value is present where this is a security, of course, and you're the owner of a perfected copy. And so the labour that you have that is there in the bond has been being used a lot. You could go on Standard & Poor's and look to see what's traded, and you know, in your BC bond, and how much is traded there, or your social and things. But if everything came to be under bankruptcy in 1933, and it slowly comes to be toward what that was, and at that point then all the substance was taken away, and the means to be able to settle things was given to us to, you know, Public Law 73 and one's debt instruments in a private manner, or otherwise you've got ways to do this. But we the people really is like a franchise otherwise, and we the people wholly are sort of a franchise where one would have been a citizen instead of a national. So you are a national, and that just describes what you are. But you've got Treasury Direct corporation or company accounts, and that one must be, those all must be funded by the owner, and one can learn how to do those things. And so purchasing and things could come to be, and it comes from the owner of a personal bank more, where it has value, but it's in the private where not much is in the public, and you've got private contracts going on. And so you have the capacity where you are to respond to any issue that's going on more very simply, just by taking care of the matter. Yes, so that's something that we can be talking about, because you have to be given consideration, because somebody has been given consideration themselves to use your account. I mean, you also have the capacity to do such, and that's what it is as a page. You're sort of learning more about what this is about. So, where someone is, they could learn some things, of course, more, but paying attention to the things we're doing here. If privately, it's always done privately and not publicly, because you could do things privately. Okay. So when you're looking at things, one could look at the IRS Employee Manual, Title 26, and you could learn a lot of the answers to everything, in fact. It's under Title 26, you'll see that every single thing you've done is a tax. And so now you can go on. It means that every single bill, everything you paid is a tax. Okay. And something should be returned to you because that's something that you paid. That's a tax. So every penny, matter of fact. And bills of exchange that you have as promissory notes, as Federal Reserve notes, is chump change. And at the one day a year, that all gets assessed to be of some value. But otherwise, it's just a manner that would be a way for an account to be of the tax of a tax that you paid, because every single thing that you paid, where was any bill, was a tax, in fact, which is owed back to you. So there's a way that somebody could learn to work themselves to become more, to build the credit. And so when you decide that you're going to do a counterclaim, you're automatically building your own credit, if that's something interesting as well, in the way that you get something done. Yes?
Oh, okay. My credit is definitely...
No, well, I'm talking about actually your ability to be able to get something paid to you from the credit that was spent in all of the things that cost, whatever it was, that an issue that you have is that was, as you're sitting now, and it's all cleared up. It's all been cleared up. So how did that happen? You've got a bit of a training, and you've to correspond privately. That's what we just talked about. We just said finally that you could learn a little bit about the IRS Employee Manual, and you could look at Title 26 certainly, because there's a lot of answers which exist there under Title 26. And basically, you can see that there's bills of exchange, and then that has a definition. One should know what a bill of exchange is in relation to any other name that's used. But when you have an agency to an agency, a bill of exchange can be used, and you could be settling things through a federal wire sort of transfer more, where you've given the currency to the Department of the Treasury, of the Executive Secretary of 1500 Pennsylvania Avenue, and in Northwest Room 3413, Washington, D.C. 20220. So
wow.
One can learn how to do that. So now what you've done is to give the treasurer some currency that now the treasurer can give to who's charged. Yes? And so now a charge is to this person or this group, and that is something that you need to be paid for. And so it's given to them in memory of your account, which is your social or your EIN, yes?
Okay.
And that's it. That's it. So basically, you've won your case. That's it. So, you know, that's it. What I've just explained, okay? So that's in a nutshell. I'm not sure if that's 20 minutes or something, but we should go on to the next bit and talk about the next section, which is how do you cancel and what is cancelling and loosing, an obligation of a contract where something was, to make that null and void, or to make it null and inoperable, yes? Because some things occurred which should be made null and inoperable. And that's what you've just done with that page. You've made various things as contract null and operable, and you've not contracted to anyone, and not any contract is present with you. It's this, unless some charges that hasn't been answered, you see. So to release it's merging and where an opening is of both ends for a debt or credit or discharge, there's a release and there's an obligation. And when you changed the types of system in banking and also, the way that government would be, and you move from a republic to a democracy which has a lot of corporatocracy within itself fully, and so somebody becomes more like a corporate citizen, where democracy is, but a republic is what still exists. And under UCC 103, you and I, we all are still connected to the republic, and UCC 308 are things which somebody could be looking into. And that in the court system, it just is reflecting, isn't it? Because you've got two systems, one that's the venue from the land, and then you've got this other venue which is corporate, and it's below a living being. It doesn't need a living being in a living account. And fascism is where you've just mixed it up, got too much corpse, and it's got into a grey area of the living. I mean, it needs just to be cleared up, which it can be and should be. And so you're carrying out an act which is within the court's satisfaction, and you've learned more to be a concise, more trustee where you are. So a trust is being expressed where a trust is, where the court is, but otherwise you've got other words that you would use, like you'd be looking at testor, who is a testor, and testee, and these sorts of things. So that's different wording. But basically, you're carrying out an act of payment, which is to do with the court satisfaction. And what you did with that first page was just to have set everything off, because you could learn how then to have given them the money order. You can get, so a rescission really is the extinguishment, basically, of whatever was by something, something as a writ that was, and it's clearing that writ away, because what is that's existing where that isn't is something else, and that which should be fallen back to should be, because it's a more perfect in its circumstance to describe something going on where anything is. But basically, look, it was a lot of big mess. Why? Because you and I, we just are sitting on our duffs, and the fourth estate hasn't existed, which is above all these corporate positions, which one should learn about very much. It's very important. So otherwise, one is actual, that you have an incapacity to be able to perform, and so how could there be a claim, because you don't have two parties? There wasn't, you see. It only was by some forcedness that some two parties existed, but that could be pointed out where something is. The apprentice really has learned how to discharge what's gone on there, yes? Because you're the principal of the matter. So you're learning how to discharge that, and you're acting as the fiduciary of your own affair. So it's a contract which is negotiable, and you're doing that. It's a negotiable instrument, as bills really are, as notes are, as checks are, as promissory notes are, and all these notes get bundled and they eventually go into a security. And this is what's happening at the courthouse and various things. And this is pretty disastrous, because none of that has got any proper security whatsoever, like it should, because it's supposed to be under Article 3, Article 4, Article 8, truly Article 8, supervision, because it only can be something that comes from the living and has to be secured, and not from some dead man condition, you see. And so this is very, really wrong, what's going on. Taking people's properties away, and more because of the circumstance of things, of a fusion of the two democracies with what the republic was, and the mixing of those up a bit has caused a fray of everything to be two venues where someone is in a court, and they didn't know that. You've got a venue that you can select in the private, One could really learn how to get a cusp number that they could set up, and you could set a UCC1 if somebody wanted to do that, and get a lever number, and then use a UCC1 trust account more to create a link to a bond where you've got, which the Secretary of the Treasury, where somebody really created a bond and they gave their UCC1 trust account more, and they got their green card more given back to them, and they are using this number more or less to apply then for the cusp number, and they'll get that from the www.cusp.com, and they'll register, and you register there, and you get a new identifier, and you're learning as under 144A that's a private security, and you're listing it more as that. Otherwise, it could be done in another way, and it could be done through one of these platforms that do this, like NICE or the SEC. And it's basically then they're handling the direct depository corps company, application really for your direct more capacity, because your bond is worth currency, and many of those people all have out there used that, but it's not that you're using your BC bond, you're learning how to create currency from that, and that's what you have to learn how to do. So one really could know how you can get your $1 million bond, or how much of a bond is it that you want to create, or where you insured your own vehicle. You've just got a public way that you put something to show that you've got some consideredness of currency that you would put toward a vehicle, or like third-party insurance, for instance, and how much would that be for you, if your value of the vehicle and things like that. And so one could learn more how to be in the private, and so you could set your own treasury account up and get the routing number to the TDC, and that is there where the seed and company is, and so an application really where the DTC is. Wisely, somebody learns how to go forward, and they're learning things. That's very important, because everything really is acting as a debt instrument and goes directly to pass through a bank, only if it's settled more. That's where an account is, and how did that pass through? Today you've got these various ways that things are passing more electronically, and you've got the Electronic Transfer Act from 2002 and things, and where a signature you sign could be used behind the scene, transferring things, and you could have not even known that. And this is in the public, and so behind the scenes something is happening in the private, and so one could access everything, and you've really got laws, of course, which assist to help people. Somebody who's listening and they'd like to learn more, they could look at 31 USC and look at the definition of 5312, which is really about an insured bank, and what a private banker is, which that you could become, you see. And so that's something which, where someone is, they could become a private banker more. And so through the direct deposit, corporation, one could really be learning how to operate more, and a black card operation, and one could be learning and getting information more about this, and so that you can get authorization. And so a whole range of things where people have done things exist, of course, but how did you do that? And so most everything does have some merit where something is. How did something get you done? And people should do things more because they now have knowledge. like, so where somebody is, they might not know that the sister K is a trust, and it's really as only has beneficiaries basically where something is overall. But you've got a trustor, which the settler is. You've got a trustor, you've got a settler, you've got a grantor, and a creator. So you've got, these are more the words that you should be using, because that's sort of relating more to everything that you're doing versus something is just really only a trust itself, like in a court where something is. So being you've got words trustor, of course you've got settler, like I just said, you've got the creator and you've got grantor, and so you get those definitions and you go to the library and look up those words a little bit, so you're kind of becoming a little bit more familiar with everything. Okay, so that's a section of things that we just did then, and let's see how we go. We can do another section, and then we'll take a small break, and then we could do some more sections. Continue on. We could take a 5-minute break, and we could do some more sections. But how do you win your case? It really is because you've got a statute of fraud that's evidentiary, typical, and because you're doing a conditional acceptance upon proof of claim, like we said in that first one, and you've got some wordedness from it. You've got an interrogatory, which really is your notice, and it's because a civil code really can't lead to a confessed judgment unless the debtor was considered to such, you see. But if you didn't consider it as such, well, you didn't. Of course you didn't. Something happened. And then to file an oath and an order of the court is to be certified, by an attorney. It means that somebody could be asked to do that because what happened? Well, there was a civil code and that a confessed judgment came from, and unless that where somebody is a debtor had been given consideration, that cannot be so, you see. Some omission has existed, and somebody's just gone on where something is not to have heard what the nature of the matter is, and have gone on to the cause of action instead, and something has gone on. And so where that circumstance is, it's like, please file your oath and the order of the court, to be certified. And so somebody who's done that, they have to only be able to respond with an attorney. They have to be represented. So the magistrate would have to be represented, you see. So why are you doing this letter up front? Because this is behind the scene of it, and that's not good. It should be wise that somebody clears it up and they care about the circumstance, how something happened, but then you're just clearing things up because that's what you've done. All deed really is in a trust, which is in the court, and it contains that confessed judgment, like what we were talking about. And so what is that confessed judgment, and how did it come to be, you see? Because there's certain issues that relate to the bonds, the bid, the performance, the payment bonds that was drawn up by accommodation, and somebody's name was put, somebody else's, took this over from you and said that you'd abandoned that, which now that's really problematic because that's going to never get paid off. It'll really take a long time, and damn it, that's cost a fortune, and that's what's created a great credit that we the people have, because it's just a massive fraud and theft that's been going on that level, which needs to be settled and zeroed out, you see. So which it should be, so that clears everything up, because it should be bailed out, which we can be talking a bit about. Maybe we'll get to that. But you really have court bonds and securities, and you've got your bid, the performance and payment bonds, and you've got various types of bonds the same in court as well as in government, and those bonds in the circumstance could have been holding you liable on some contract which you're really not a party to whatsoever. And so what we'll be talking about here is really what happened with those bonds, because something happened upstream where the nature of the event, the nature of the cause of action wasn't dealt with, and it should be. The question is, straight up front to find out what the jurisdiction is, whether it's civil or whether it's criminal. And so, but past the point that nothing happened like that, something was an error of omission, which you're saying, hey, there's an error of omission where something is here, and you wanting to correct this, you see? Why? Well, because the bonds all got on-sold past it, which they would, and a pooling comes to be from all those notes, and the service agreements and things just like this. It's just, how's that possible to have a security after this, you see? Because it eventually would be a security. Where most people are looking at that, they think, oh, these are just notes. How is it that transfers into some security? But it does when they're all bundled up. But they sure are, and so that's contraband, isn't it? Because somebody's going to be buying that, and they're buying a good, which really is from illegal means that it was got, unlawful means that it got. Now something is being unsold. That's contraband. And so that is contraband. It's like, well, somebody's holding contraband. Well, they have to quickly deal with that, and you can give something to the judge to make sure that that's dealt with. And there's ways to do that kindly. Yes. So under a statute of fraud, section 1624, one could look, for instance, like at various civil codes like this one, I'm just could cite there, it's a California civil code, but you've got UCC 2201, and you've got sections there under 2201, which is really to do with you having some evidentiariness to raise the issue that some liability is existed as a defence, and that you haven't waived any of that, is what we're talking about right now, and that wherever anything that's closed off, and now you're somewhere and you don't think that was right, it sure wasn't, because something was abandoned and something was kept to be abandoned from you, where that said claim was. But it's, as I said, these things are not got any security at all. It's terrible, because you're supposed to have Article 3 or Article 4 or Article 8 over the top of any of those matters, because a real being has to be behind that as the principle, versus where do you find the principle after a moment, and how could the principle be recouped of things, because all the bonds have been, as the notes have been pooled, bundled and then pooled and on-sold. And that's what goes on, where things are like a money mechanics behind the scene. But so one could say, a species of Wuman, of course, was drafted as to be like a bit of a third party in all of that as a contractee, and all was really done by a secret code, which how would you have any known whatever the bar member was, which was processing, and what the process was that they were using behind the scene, because that was not evident to you, and they could have switched up stuff, and suddenly you're only in a corporate manner, like what do you do, what's your work, how much do you make, and that is a corporate condition, and you've suddenly given to yourself to what that is, and you're by your decor following along where something is. It should be raised as an objection straight away, quick smart, in that the nature is very important, that you have a right to be able for presentment. And that word presentment comes to be a word which is very important in this day, because you have a right for presentment. And so you're looking at what's logical, and you're being more logical about things, and you're learning how to be logical where the circumstance is, and what's private, which I'm teaching you, is not in the public. And so this is what we keep having said over some long time, that you could do things in the private. So who raises the statute of fraud? And that's what you've done on the front page. You've raised the statute of fraud. as a valid defence, you see. Because why? Well, because you looked at, you maybe wanted to see what the instrument was that was used, like the 1099A and E, and how that was done, and look to see, and you have a right to look to see how that was signed and what the accommodation was. But a lot of these things are in the private, and what would you need to do that for? You could just note that it's true that something has gone on. This is just the evidence of that. That's all behind the scene of it, and it's evidentiary. It must have been. So one was made to be a party where they really were not a party whatsoever, and you could have said, I reserve all my rights. And it means that you want somebody to be living behind anything, not living. You care that somebody, you don't want corpus delicti just to be behind something, because you've just said, I'm reserving all my rights. So if somebody did due diligence and you got that back to them within 3 days, and you put that, you just wrote on anything and said, returned it, and said, principal not found here, and just put that in red close to the stamp. Anytime that you ever did it, it's called next 3-day service next. And so you should do that, because that cancels out something that existed, under Lex Fori. It wouldn't matter how long it was that you did that. It's just equivalent to it. It means that something occurred under a dead man condition, and venue was taken away from you, which is first, and our jurisdiction really comes about as a result of venue that you've selected, and you're the one who can select this. That's not somebody else who could select this. So if you're a third-party contractor, or you could be a contractee to a pooling and service agreement where there is of these bid, the performance and the payment bonds that goes on, and by all these courthouses being private trading houses, really, and a commercial system being behind the scene, one really has only been an infant decedent in an account, and that got probated and was continuously being probated. Maybe you should look up the definition of what it means to have been something being probated, because it's really property that's been taken away from the dead. A fictional being, which is you're running around as an infant decedent, which really, that's a modern form of slavery, basically, you see. So this is undoing what that is a new epoch, because everything is positively inducted in a new currency, as the arm is, and the debt is settled, and this is the real new reset, and all of us should be focused on this actual, really. And this is the Administrative Council that sits above the Legislative Assembly. Pay attention, please. You only need your family to go forward where something is to assist to correct. And honest to God, most of these nations all saying, please, where are you? Are you at home? And where is everybody? You see what I mean? So you and I, we need to wake up and be woken more. And otherwise, you've just been getting probated. Your property's just been taken, and we're going to wake up and there's got nothing left. And that is really bad, and you can see that going on. And so it should be really corrected, because you've got all those bid, performance and payment bonds, which I'm talking about here, that you become more aware of, that all became bundled together, and then they became stuffed, of course, before that, and now they'll get pooled and placed and being sold to an investor, you see. So this is what I'm looking at, which just the money mechanic behind the whole thing is just disastrous. It should be corrected. It's really important. One should be caring about people that are involved where something is like this, and do things in a manner that keep people secure and clear something up, and don't have some grudge against anybody. That's going to be totally wrong, because you won't be in a new mindset, which you should really learn about being in a new mindset. But a strange attractor is, and this is what we're talking about, that causes all this to be cleared up, and this is the feast that you're all supposed to have. But all real securities really are not necessarily negotiable instruments, you see. A promissory note and a security and these things, there's all definitions. But basically, all that in these things. It could have a life of 9 months, a parent, and have some depreciation there. Yet it really doesn't ever get closed out because things aren't getting paid or completed or zeroed out. And so things are growing and going and causing a massive bubble to be, and currencies of account can exist somewhere that's against everybody else who's a debtor, you see. And that system itself, one could learn more a bit about by looking into our work more and looking into this whole area. But securities really, it's said, really isn't a note. And all really is bundled, though, up into a security, like what we're talking about. And now, if you look at this, it has to be governed more by Article 8 and Article 3 and Article 4 court. You can't have that being governed by Article 1, certainly not, or Article 2, because it's a security which has more of a maturity past 9 months, in fact, and lots of that is a disclaimer in manner of being because it's intermingled and it's been determined by some barratry, in fact, and judgment, where somebody is buying and selling themselves and they're not having any proper disclaimer about what they're on selling. And there's just a massive risk of risk activity and things. And those are things which laws are supposed to protect and things, and it's sort of not. And this is what needs to actually be helped and sorted out. So you've got foreign agents registration, which everybody who's an officer, which is actually like working with papers that's like this, that transfers into currencies of account that comes to be currency of exchange. They must have, because a deal could be going south where something is, because they're using your birth certificate, and it's the state of the state of the state that owns your BC bond, basically, which this system itself should be corrected as it can to work harmoniously, proper as it should, is supposed to. The foreign agent sort of registration and insurance, somebody's supposed to have, and they're supposed to have an anti-bribery oath as well. And these things should hang behind you at an office. Otherwise, your office is for rent, and that's not right. You're not even operating under statute and things. And under UCC 302, you've got the states really that are in due course. There's rules which existing really, where you're looking at a payee and a payor, and it's all that's taken, which really as a subject, that it has come about from a confessed judgment, which could have come from the bench, where it was a dead man's, a dead man's circumstance. It was like a dead man having spoken. You see, yes, and so that's fraud, where the circumstance is you can't have a corpse that began something or is part of a principled mixed upness, whereas security is for sure, because there's great risks, isn't there? Because what somebody does is say, sorry, that isn't right, because they just bring up the issue of the nature of the circumstance, yes? So let's take a 5-minute break, you and I, and when we come back, we're going to talk about what do you do where you are, and what is it that on that one page, and we're going to talk about what is on that one page. It's really a claim of recoupment. It's a funny thing, you've just got one page, but everything is there on that one page, and we're just talking about what is in that counterclaim. It's really a claim of recoupment, and we're going to be talking just a little bit more for the next 10 minutes, perhaps just a little bit about this counterclaim defense, yes? So, Jill, I'll call you back. I'll call you back in 5 minutes, mate. Love you, mate. Okay, mate.
Okay, talk to you then.
Okay. Lukey.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute my mic. Hi.
Oh, good.
Hi, David. Thank
Great. Yeah, great, mate. I'm glad we're talking today a bit about winning your case and having an adverse counterclaim. It's an adverse counterclaim because it's really mixed up there. There's things going on that you've become tangled in, which wasn't you. It's sort of that which has gone on is something over there that's controversy, but that's not your controversy, which is of another matter. That might be about another matter, but you're sticking just with the nature of things to clear things up in that letter, yes? That front letter, which is really a statute of fraud, which is evidentiary we're talking about, which is the fraud that's done on the bonds, the investors and the people. That's all past this, which one should make a claim. And so this section, which we're talking about right now, should be a claim in recoupment. And what I'm doing is giving you the background behind that front page, because everything has existed in it. When you've got a presupposition that you've got a counterclaim, it means you've got something else going on and you're building credit for yourself, versus it's just being pulled out from you. But whatever's being pulled out that's being used from you can be being returned back to you, which if you learn how to do this part of things, then you could be applying that currency toward things and what have you. But if no victim was where a crime is, well, how can you have a victimless crime? You have to be a victim there. The rules are often written as a shall and a will, and it's in the future, because if there was a crime, now a law is. But then if there isn't a crime, there's no crime. The law is written because it's to be reminding you. Now, if there was a crime and something was written, it's like, well, shouldn't you be responsible because something was written about that? You're supposed to only do this honest, and we care that you do, and can't be a continued pattern that somebody's just doing something, but it could be because something is safety of itself, or it's really just it's reckless. But but if no victim is, no crime was, and no claimant is, and under common law, of course, you've got a claim of recoupment, because why? Well, because no charge existed, but a charge came to be because someone took you down on a corporate level and didn't know, and got a set-off of those charges for themselves, and that could never really be properly discharged. And it's just a massive amount of fractional reserve banking and things that goes on afterward, and servicing and interest and monies, which goes to be into these derivatives, which is massive, huge bubble right now. And how's that all could be get paid? It's impossible, which it should, and it be zeroed out and cleared up, and money's disgorged from where it should be, and corrected. You see, so Treasury can function like it's supposed to. And currency can be positively inducted. You can be given a real true ID. That's what the Administrative Council would do, that sits above the Legislative Assembly, which is we're the people. That's the chain of command.
Nice.
So because you have a claim of recoupment, what's that mean? It's republicing that debt. It's revenuing. It's revenue to you and I. And this, so why should it not be that the approach that you took was something which was truly to do more with what is your defense? You're obliged to use any law and any defense that's given to you, that's under the government, that's provided to you as some remedy, and not to be without that whatsoever. No. So you're there with an unabridged right, and you're there with unlimited worth versus you're only operating under a limited worth about some circumstance. Some things you could see are limited worth. Well, they're things that chattel, but certainly your account can't be just considered chattel, so that you're no longer as part of the picture, you see. And so that's the problem where something is. And so that's why that front page, it's a counterclaim, which is really a defense. And so if you look at various things that's written, of course, like Rule 13 of the Civil Code of Federal Procedures and things like that, you could really look, and you could see, obviously, of course, you've got two types of counterclaims that's existing, don't you? You've got one which is absolute, which is mandatory, that's what that front page is. It's like straight away you'd be released, okay? So because then you've paid forward, paid to the order of, and you've given them a transaction to do this, which we'll talk a bit about. But you've used their paperwork to set it off. So you're basically really important that you've got a counterclaim, which is really your defence. And you're looking that there's two types of counterclaims. There's one that's mandatory. Why? Because it's some transaction which really has gone on, that's been filed, that all the documents which a counterclaim is that's arisen more out of the plaintiff. In this case, it could be a ruling from a bench, really trespassing against your case, your claim, and that can have arisen somewhere from someone as a corpse having taken over your right, or having put something into the record and didn't make a proper record. But under Rule 13 of the Code of Federal Procedure, there you've got under, of course, the Uniform Commercial Code, you've got 3-305 that people could look into, but you've got really a great proprietary interest more where the bonds are, which what we've been talking, these big performance and payment bonds, in this circumstance for the court is, and transactions which are really negotiations, and some negotiation about that quick smart has to be, of course, because that's under 3306 of the Uniform Commercial Code, you've got a proprietary and property interest in various notes in its proceeds, and that's what you're saying on that first page. You've basically said that overall you've got a right, a property interest in things in the rolls of the proceeds to the right, and to have rescinded whatever that was. Also to negotiate whatever that transaction is. And now you're giving someone permission to do that, you see. So if it's very kind, you'd give this to the prosecutor to be the trustee of, and you've got a right to who it is that you give this to, or you could give this to the judge, because it must be immediate that you take that something has occurred that he or she should have really presided better over, and now that you've paid them to make sure that they've put that money toward what needs to be, and you've learned how to do this, you see. So it's what that front page, what that one page is really basically is a claim of recoupment, and behind the scene of it, because it's a counterclaim, you see. So you're building credit about it, and you're looking at things more like a creditor would, looking at the whole picture. This is everything that's gone on. I need to stop this quickly, and correct it and mitigate what needs to be. So all really is governed under securities, honest, and like what we were talking about, they are supposed to be more Article 8 that are governing and looking over those securities. Why? Well, because they're secured. And you can't have all that risky types of behaviour going on where the courthouse is, where you've got real estate and you are the real estate, and that's fixed and unmoved, and real estate that's living, and you've got agriculture terms and agricultural liens, and that goes through to the IRS, and then the IRS goes to your bank account. So that's all something that's gone on behind the scene with electronic transfer. And these are things in that what should you really be cared for? Something which is not a wet ink signature, which you can demand simple that in the file, because you can file a counterclaim under a Supreme Court, and you can select more the venue from the land instead, and you can do this privately, confidentially, and you could, by using negotiable instruments, you can have really been able to clear up various things, and wherever extraneous documents are outside what's the promissory part of anything, but that hasn't been written up. You see, that's what the problem is about what something was, which was false. And so there's something which really isn't adjustable proper, that's behind the scene of what something was, where those bonds were created. And this is the problem. It's very contrabandy. Somebody can be holding contraband. This is contraband. It's like you've made something which really is from something that's not lawful, and you've pulled it all, and then you've gone on, and because it's really stuffed, it's difficult to extract. How can someone actually, an actuarist, actually go forward if they can? They shouldn't do, but it takes time for something, and it's really wrong, all of that's going on. It's too difficult to extract. It should be bailed out. And so, where something is always taxes existed about that, and because who did that there, where bills of exchange was, they used a system that you paid the credit. It was you paid the taxes, excuse me. The principal was paying the taxes, and they were just by accommodation using that, and so they weren't indirectly to have paid tax on it. So it's kind of except that in this circumstance where somebody would say, look, I want this settled, but I really want to let you know that I'm going to give you something of value. What's that? I'm going to pay the tax for you. He's like, really? Yes. And that's what it means. I'm going to give you this for value upon some condition. It's like, really? It's like, yeah, no. It's like, oh, wow. So what are you doing? God help us, you getting something resolved. Because why? Because the taxes have to be paid on all sorts of stuff and things. It's really a problem for everybody who made anything on it. And it's just unbelievable that how's it going to be? So a system does exist where you could just say, listen, I'm going to accept what it is. There you go. A conditional acceptance upon proof of claim. And I'm going to give you this for value. It's like, you're kidding. It's like, no. It's like, oh, you're joking. It's like, no. It's like, please help me right now. Get me out of wherever I am. It's like, okay, because you've got, they wrote up an appearance bond for you. You've got that sort of put into your front letter. Please write up an appearance bond for me by special appearance. And so everything goes underneath that. So it's your real estate. That's the law. That's by this interrogatory. You of course, it seems to be more under a proper contract of what's relevant and to what you're correcting the misinformation. And it's a rescission. And so one could learn a little more about this under the code of, the code of federal rules and things. You've got 22.6.23. People could learn under 12 CFR. You've got the Federal Code of Electronic Transfer, which we were talking about, which regulates these sorts of things. And under where Appendix H is, you've got rescission, you've got H8, H9, and you've got various sorts of rights, which is rescinded. And so it's a right where a rescindedness is of bonds, where when no fee was, as the principle, one couldn't have seen anything where something was not transparent, yet there's various taxes that would ordinarily have to be paid on that, and that it's just that you've just said, look, I'm going to just pay those taxes on that, and you being the principal of the matter is you've given that to be part of something as well. So it's because what the investment interests, like what we've been talking about, were items which was includable under proper Article 3, Article 4, Article 8 courts, and circumstance, meaning only a living being, more or less, could be there, you see? Yes? And because that got run over, yes, it did, it's reckless for investors and people. You would know it. It's a big problem which is going on for all people's property versus being taken, you see. So you have a claim of recoupment, and that is very important. Okay, so our section, like this section's been really about your claim of recoupment, and the fact that you've got a counterclaim is your defense. Plus, it's mandatory. The other type of counterclaim is a permissive one. Something can be permissive as far as a counterclaim is concerned. But what's mandatory comes because, no, this is priority. Watch out. This is pay attention because something else is based upon this. Yes? And that you'd be caring to correct things. And so what you've done is to pay something, pay to the order of, and whatever that amount is, and you've given this to the Treasury, right? For the Treasury, for that to be drawn upon, to be given to the charger, which can be in this case, the prosecutor perhaps, or the magistrate of the court. If it's to the magistrate, it's really they must act because, honest to God, they become the trustee of the matter. You see, and you have a right, and you would use Form 56 to make sure that you've got the right of appointment, which you do, and you can appoint who is the officer that you would care in part of the trust to fulfill the role of what this is. So you're taking hold more to be overall for yourself because you're learning how to manifest what necessarily is where things are. And I think that's sort of a very good piece as a section. And I think that, because it says it's an adverse counterclaim, maybe we should talk just a tiny bit about what that is a little bit, so you've got a bit of a background behind, you know what, you've really stepped it up a bit because you said this is an adverse counterclaim. So where it's an adverse counterclaim, it means that it's very mixed, and because you've got Article 8 that's under articles and underwritten things that how that should be governed. You've got securities from the bid, the performance, and the payment bonds that went on, and how the 1099A and E took things away from you and caused those things to be abandoned and made the maximal amount of money. And so now you've got people really acting to try to be secured of what that is. They don't want that to be touched. So you're looking at people acting irrationally often. And then behind the scene, nobody, that's what's going on. But in front, you can just see often a lot of anger and stuff because someone is looked at as being an Atlanticus or a Phyllis Millis or a Sevilla to Mortis, and they're getting these 3 strikes and you're out. And they did that from some secret code that they used because they were looking at you and operating from some code behind themselves, which how could you have known whatever that was? It straight up should be said, look, I want to know what this is, but you've just done that by jumping into your own suit, by just paying for a Article 3 court and doing this yourself. Or you're able to cite what this is where you are because every single court is a common law court and you can place things in terms which what this letter does. It puts things in terms of, it's Article 3 or Article 4 of its matter. Article 3 really is about contracts. Article 4 more is really to do more with government issues and stuff. So where error is. So it's an adverse counterclaim because you've got these matters that are going on downstream because you've got contraband, plus you've got what a governance is that's supposed to be, that's over the top of what these issues are, which really are securities. And because they start out as notes, somebody goes, oh, well, that's not a security. It comes to be, absolutely, because like what we've just talked about, and because of it, it is an Article 3, Article 4, Article 8 types of governance. So it's an adverse counterclaim. So because you've got a claim of recoupment which relate to the securities that arose as a result of some action that somebody took, which that's what you have now. You have that claim because this person took not a proper action. And then you got harmed, injured, costed, or damaged because of it. The claim that one looks under UCC code, you can look at 3306, and you can look at those things to learn how to proceed a little bit more and learning how you have an investment write-off, of course, and you've got things that's going on where you've got an interest in what has happened, where that property is, and what happened where something was put as abandoned, yet would have been you see, there's currencies and monies that have to be paid by the corpse, and that ends up having to be paid back to you as the secured party creditor if you learn how to use this part of things. So it's the nature of the action. It's the nature of the action which really is the Article 4, and it's the nature of the action really which governs these securities. And so it's the nature of the action which really has been glossed over. So somebody's just gone on to cause of action and nobody's going to achieve anything down there. Why? Because you just presuppose that you're not from the venue of the land, and you're going to just be dealt with as a corporate conditioning, you see, which isn't of your proper rights, natural, that flows from the title that you have, but you're given some other title, like a debitor or a deaf-ended ant or something, or a plaintiff or whatever. But one could do things where that is, and you can achieve anything because what you've done is to you don't have to have a title in your hand to be the owner of a perfected title. You see?
Nice.
You see? Yes? Because the words that you're using is presupposing that something is, and you're using the word is in your document and saying comes now from the word, from the land. And so you've got various UCC learning, like Uniform Commercial Code, like 8.505 and 8.508, which really could tell someone a little bit more about it as first claim, and then 8-102 to 105, more or less. And you're looking at the use of Article 8, and it's not Article 2, and then because it's been maybe put under Article 2 or Article 1, wow, that's a counterclaim that you have. Why? Well, because somebody wrote out a 1099A, which was a claim of recoupment as a claim that the claim was abandoned, but you could fill out a 1099A and learn how to do that, which is the claim of recoupment for yourself as a counterclaim. It's with the possessionary right to the proceed of such, which really was undisclosed by that third party, and that was being traded where a CUSIP number, and the trading was, and then the courthouse has a CUSIP number which they trade with, and they're passing that on to one group within themselves at the federal courthouse, which then uses that all into a security, see, and that's on-sold into the market. Somebody buys up that debt because it has a servicing and all sorts of things, and it's going to be going on, and currency's got to come in. And are you going to claim it? Well, if you didn't, that's the reason why it's on the market, you see. It's like because undisclosed third party was where that contract was, which was signed, and it was signed by accommodation. It's really a counterclaim because it's a proceed which you really hadn't agreed to whatsoever, but it's supposed to, and for you to be able to proceed and to go forward with some note. And so you can settle that where claims are, paid, and so that you have the right to select who that person is that you give this to as the officer, because you're the only one who can give the right to, as the principal, for those taxes to be paid. And so that's the reason why you're accepting it upon some condition of proof of claim, and you're giving this for value and consideration given. Consideration means, something has to be given to you. I've used that account. You can use it too. That's consideration. It has to be shown. You have to be given consideration, have proper contractualness, and that you're getting everything done more in the private, and you're learning not to bring that into the public at all because you don't have to. But if you put at the top of your notice something like that relates more to the competency to testify, I would say this section of your adverse claim and this whole section, it's like fourth section that we're doing. It's really to do with what did you do on your letter where you were. You put right up the top of your notice that it was your competency to testify is that you're a national, you're a foreign national, or you're a national, foreign to the USA, foreign to the corps. You see?
All right.
Because you're outside the corps. That's a foreigner, you're outside the corps. That's what that means. And you're a national. Most everybody is a national that's foreign or outside the corps, you see. You're just a national. That's what a national means. And one could learn how to correct these sorts of things. But those are things which administrative court could correct, you see, and should, because that sits above the Legislative Assembly and that gets everything done. And it's lazy that none of us have done anything. It's like that's actually your job and mine. Why? Well, because you need to become a mendicant and care at some point in your life. And this is what should be performed for society. Very, very important. Now you have a child raised, you have a village, you have a great nation. You see? So you've got a land court, yes, and you can incite the land court where you are. Now, county courts are already land courts. That's big. They're the ones that have jurisdiction over the land and should know where someone is. Very importantly, what the value of that is. But if they don't and they're running over people, it means everybody's properties are not being protected whatsoever. Because this is the kind of thing you could interpret going on, certainly with real estate, because you are the real estate, and these two things are combined where things are. So, because it's a BC is bond, and that's a real estate. That's the real estate that's been traded. So, and then in prison bonds, it's called the real estate. So, and we can come to this, but let's see. None of the jurisdiction that represents anybody could, where a dead man statute is. So we've got a dead man statute codified under 601 of the Federal Rules of Evidence, and it says that you and I really have to be competent to testify on, but what's a competency to testify on behalf of a dead person or a fictional person? You see, this is where your first objection is. How could somebody have testified on behalf of a dead person when you're not a dead person? You see, in your front page, you've assumed that because you've just said, look, I'm a national. Okay. And so your first objection really is that the corpse really is dead and that I'm before you more by special appearance, typical of an grievance and a nuisance, which I need to be loosened from and made whole. And I didn't waive any rights or any remedies of any statutory defences, and I cannot testify on behalf of any dead person as a corporation. So what have you just said then? You've just said they can't either. How can you? But on this matter, on some other matter, that was just chattel perhaps. But in this matter, like where things are, your only account has been as an infant decedent, and that's what's been probated. That's why somebody has to have probated that. Look up the definition of probate. It's like dealing with a dead person's estate as an infant decedent, because you're lost at sea and not in the holy sea. So because accounts really is not real. See? It's you who is real. That's not real. It is who is real. Pay attention, because this will clear everything up. God help us. Everywhere where you are, it's supposed to be, because all rights will be turned over, not to the corpse, because if you do, you're going to see a conflict going on, can't you? And when you ever do that, does anything ever come back? No, it generally doesn't. It's like goodbye, it went, until you turn it round. And you can, if, as we the people do, with the pen. The pen is mightier than the sword. It's because administrative council, which is we the people, is only something which you and I, we can select. Can the government, somebody, you are the government, you see? So we've got to stop this idea that you're against this, you're against that. It's like, this is not right. This is not actual correct. You're labeling things more yourself, and you're looking at where the issue really is more of what's compensation and what's complementary, and what's of commensurable terms, meaning terms that we can understand together in a capacity to be able to testify upon any issue. And if you've got issues that relate to something that's being verified, as far as the security is concerned, it should be wisely as it is, because something has lots of things, time past investments goes on, and the title is unsold, and none of these notes ever follow the title. So this is a huge error. You cannot supposed to have a security without notes that follow the title. But how can notes follow a title when the notes have massive amounts of omissions in it? You see? Yes? So
I think so.
this is sort of your adverse claim, basically. Yes? Okay. And so you have a defense under what? Article 6 of the Constitution. Yes?
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, so let's see. I think we can take another 5-minute break, and we might do another show or two, perhaps. Yes, but I think let's see. These might be sort of 10 minutes or like 12 minutes each or something. I'm not sure, but I think it really should be that right now where we are, we should talk a little bit about what we've been talking about, the dead man. What is that? Under a dead man statute, under a probate law, what is that, eh? It doesn't sound good. That's right. It means that there are some things which could be put underneath that, and there's other things which really can't be. Okay? Yes? And so when you need to have something verified, you should have that. And how can somebody otherwise testify on behalf of a dead person? You see? And so that's what we should talk about. We should really talk about, how do you look at this? Did these crimes happen on the land? Yes. So say that, because now then you're dismissing the idea that it's only on a corporate level, because you just said these crimes happened to me on the land. Okay, so that's the body, yes? And it's in the body, not the title, okay, in a claim. All right? So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this. Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, mate. Call you back in 5 minutes. Okay, bye. Anyway.
mate.
Lukey, happy day, mate.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much. Talk to you
yeah,
soon.
yeah. So continuing on from that, someone draws up a page and has these presuppositions in it. If one listens to that first piece that we did, you basically, because you and I, we have the capacity to select the venue, and that's missing where most people's words are and everything. And so these crimes all happened on the land and not in commerce. And so you're saying that, you see, right at the top of your document, you're saying you're making a special appearance, Travatus Divinus, but that's your, what you're doing, your admonition really at the top of the notice of your notice, where you have to say you can put things as notice, because everything that is a notice is an affidavit, and otherwise you really you're not waiving jurisdiction because you're saying that you have an adverse counterclaim, which is defined under laws, and then you could put in brackets the various laws, because that doesn't have to appear on the paper, but there's laws which govern an adverse counterclaim. Somebody could look that up if they needed to, but it's UCC laws that exist, and you've got also, like what we were talking, Article 8, 8105, which people could look into and see this. You've got yourself, which is of an unlimited worth, and you've got what's going on as a crime that's happened, that's from the land, of course, and that, so behind the scene, of course, what's gone on is bonds that's been drawn upon that comes from original, how is it that your birth certificate is being listed in your own self, and the Vaticanus is the state of the state of the state that owns things behind the scene where that is, and are you the holder of that, which you could have a authenticated copy and be the holder of this, so that you could bring this forward, and where you go through some door, and now you're opening things up to be, you can't be just held as a corporate individual, you see. And so those things that one could learn about how they can apply their authenticated birth certificate where we are. But there's various categories of the IRS, of course, and that under IRS, in the way that they've put things together, you've got real estate and you've got fixed, which is you're the real estate. It's your BC bond and things which is being applied where something is, where property is. And so do you own that? Well, if you're only in your dead man state, you don't. But if you're in your living state, you do. And so you're really can file a counterclaim where something is, because you just became aware of things. You could use a 1099A to open things up, and you won't know what the amount is. Perhaps there's ways to do all this, and it said really that something is abandoned, and that you've got a claim of recoupment that's under the sale of all the notes that got bundled that we were talking about, and they became all pooled. And those securities on sold. So you've got your bid, your performance and payment bonds, which goes on like that, where court circumstances, and you've got a undisclosed condition of a third party that you were and put by accommodation somewhere there, and you're being held liable under a contract which, because of the nature of the cause of action, wasn't really given any time, because that's what we talked about in that page that you gave, simple. And this background that we're talking about is the evidence behind, and the what the cause of action is underneath the nature of things. So it's just relating to correcting the nature of things, and that's what everyone should do, because after that, what's the harm would have been otherwise? And under Article 6 of the Constitution, you have a defence, because you're supposed to be given a natural ability to be able to defend yourself, and you're to be given officers which also are in their true perfected selves as under oath, and you're the one who's the perfected title holder. You're the principal. You're the principal of, you see. So can that be unseated? No. And do you have to have a certificate? No. You're the principal, true perfected title holder. Okay. And you're the owner of this. And this is the counterclaim which you have. And this is you as a man. You see, this is what you have. This is not like what you don't have. This is what you have. And so it's by a tort and by your right of tort which exists there for someone to act to mitigate and to do the right thing for you, and then to clear up some matter that needed to be, because none of the courts where subject matter jurisdiction was, which wasn't where something was landed and came to you that was from verifiedness, but only fiction and presupposition, is a friendly suit, and it's not a proper suit or a condition where retaliation could be going on and all sorts of things, and things being put for that. And so, which you could see in the press where things are going on, where people are being put under vice admiralty, which they could have some advice and learn from a page and learn how to protect. And you'd have to have somebody who could protect your private rights as an international law. So no one really, where a crime doesn't exist because you don't have a victim with anything, that how can that be a crime? Which it isn't, you see. Okay? Because that's not anything that happened on the land, but because it didn't, it happened in commerce. What you just said was, hey, you're on the land. This that happened in commerce to me happened to me on the land. Okay? So as you've brought this back to your own living being. And so the topic of being under a dead man statute really is you're under something probated, meaning somebody had stepped in and said that they were going to take over your right, because why? Well, you don't look like you're old enough to me or something, and that is wrong. Nobody would do that in their ordinary sense. And then all of a sudden you're coming into some temple and that sort of thing going on as a game and as a play and as a venue, you see. So you and I, we can choose the venue, and this could be from the land versus a venue that's only corporate. And you have the right to be able to do this on the top of the paperwork, because you've just said this is what you care for. Okay, so it's very clear. It's not like something else could be going on. And so we said that it's the county courts which really do come from the land and direct to be only the constitutional proper courts that could be deciding things more over things of issues that relate to the land. But you can institute any landed court where you are, because every court is a common law court, and that is a venue within the court house itself, which you can activate by having it in the Supreme Court. So now the meaning of that is you've just said, listen, I care for people to be real. Is there anybody real there? And if anybody is, good. And if they're not, nothing's in the file. Okay? And so in a date and a moment, something is decided, and your peers and everybody there was your jury. And that's what this is a common law court of record trial by jury, which is a very different from a corporate jury, which is a jury trial, which that's a corporate trial, where you've got a captain in charge, trying to convince an audience of people with it peers that something is not relevant or something is, and controlling things. But then you're just dead in your head before things, and can you speak to a fiction? No. And so it's just gone based upon presuppositions, and this is really disastrous for most people. So a corpse really doesn't have any jurisdiction over what issues that relate to Article 3 or Article 4 issues, and this is what the President, all sorts of people going through where they've got issues that really are Article 3 and Article 4 issues. They're not Article 2 or Article 1 issues whatsoever. Why? Well, because every single thing that they did and were about and is right now an ordinary being anyway is all to do with these notes pretending they're not securities, and that's the issue of a grey area which need to be addressed by, like I said, the what sits above the Legislative Assembly of the state, which that's us, we the people. And so this is what makes law for things. And when you haven't done anything like that, well, that's right. When you sit back and you say, hey, who's in charge? And you think, well, nobody's in charge. That's right. The chain of command is from we the people, all right? And a grand jury like this takes care of the government, takes care of people in the government, honest. Because big stories, all sorts of things, people are being used behind the scene and they can't say things, they're under orders and all sorts of things in secrecy. And look, this is really doesn't have to be when you have a system that wants and sorts for agreement. And so there's time worn, and when we use system like this, it really can make sense and you can clearly clear things up. But at this moment, fascism is really being an under dead man statutes. That's what communism is. It's communist when you've taken your natural right away. That's communism, you see. And it's by communism which has been done. And it's by, everything coming into the public and only being public, meaning corporate, and nothing in the private, and the private being squashed out, but taken over itself somewhere. Because it should be a growing population, not a shrinking population, that you become more a national versus a zen of a city inside a corpse. So the crimes happen from the land. That's very important. You've said that you're making a special appearance. Good. You've got a right by tort wherever anything is, which could be said, to help protect rights which you have and property further beyond, and that you have a right to be able to change anything. Well, of course you do. This is just, let me see. So everyone really should get themselves out of a dead man statute where that shouldn't be. A corpse shouldn't have jurisdiction over any Article 3 or Article 4 issue, and the bonds themselves should be looked upon as really more Article 3, Article 4 issues, because they're securities, and where something is just based upon absolute fraud to begin with. Because why? Because the nature was not looked at and glossed over. And this is the problem in the world where things are, okay? So the competency for you to testify, or anybody else, on behalf of a dead person, kind of, how do you get to that point? By somebody else as being belligerent and you just thinking that you're going to get them to do something, but you're running over them with the whole matter, and something is not commensurable. Truly not. It's disastrous, matter of fact, because it can harm, injure, cost and damage. And so it was always, give everything unto Caesar, you see. But there's a way for you to have done that, to have given your estate, as I have, to everyone who's living. And you do it in your livingness. So who's dead as a corpse, really only as a decedent account, could have never had anything, and a judge would have just taken over from the bench where something was such, and attempts where anybody was to explain what the nature of the circumstance is would be glossed over because somebody's being forced in a picture, you see. And so if somebody is a page, you're listening and you're looking and you're thinking and you're feeling what's the nature of the circumstance of what this is, and can you describe this? Because is this your real unabridged right, and are you coming from this? And are you in the private in the way that you settle this? So you're learning what the meaning of this is. So by special appearance, somebody really doesn't waive any rights whatsoever, or remedies, or any defences, or anything statutory, or anything procedural whatsoever. And it's your admonition, really, which can't be misconstrued. And so that is the top of your notice in that page, which you could see. So it was really because something was forced and wasn't consensual whatsoever, and a corpse was a venue, God help us, and you were subject to what that matter was, and you became the subject matter, which was not you, who was with subject matter in persona, sui juris more, but just as a complainant that wasn't present and couldn't be examined properly. And anyway, who was there is the same. You see, you could cross-examine. Where's the harm, injury, cost, or damage of the real parties? And so you've just said, look, I'm reserving all my rights. What's that mean? I mean, I want to make sure that you know that if this issue does exist, it's supposed to be, you've got real parties of interest. Okay? And so that has to be satisfied as a standing, as a threshold for some issue to be, and somebody can get rid of that. So that will get rid of a lot of things that shouldn't be tried because you are reserving all your rights and you're not going along with a corpse and something fictional deciding your fate per se. And so, there's a thresh. That's what we're just talking about, sort of threshold really, where no corpse really is of any standing, and that to come in on something which where some taught actually is really, and to control and take over what that is and not have any claim behind it, but actually honest, be making out like a bandit. Why? Well, because you're making out like money from the bid, the performance, and the payment bond, and you're getting a profit from all that. But it's not taxed because it's put to you, who is not to pay the tax, is the one who has a right to have the tax paid, and it would come automatic from you, which it can come from the treasurer because you can give this, you could learn how to do that. So then the treasury then gives this to the charger, which, as I said, the way that you did this was to give this to someone who was an officer to help use this as a bond to get things cleared up. And so it's a bill to get things cleared up. And so if you're given a bill, what does that mean? It means, hey, if you're given a bill, what does that mean? It means that you owe me that money, you see, yes? And you have a right to claim that. And most people don't know those things, and these are all the things which is being traded at the moment in all these platforms. But you've got a whole range of REMIC sort of companies, which is reinvestment types of trust platforms, which pull properties and draw things and buy up notes, and just like what's going on with these private trading houses as courthouses, that's what's going on with the public trading houses, courthouses. You've got an admonition really, which at the very top, which of your notes, which is kept, and because such can't be transferred, it can't be transferred in actuality either. That's in your notes. It said this. It's right there on that page. And that's, if you've done that, it's perfect. You see, you've got your four corners of your document right, and it comes from a real a man, you see, and you brought it to a level of what this is, and you asked everybody else to be on the level of that as well, because there's a personal level now that they have, and a public level as well, not just a public level. So if you really are transferring things, or you're paying taxes, or there's bonds that's involved, the court bonds, it becomes really taxable items of the income that anybody has to investors. And so if you really are transferring things, or you're paying taxes, or you're there's bonds that's involved, the court bonds, it becomes really taxable items of the income that anybody has to investors. And so if you really are transferring things, or you're paying taxes, or you're there's bonds that's involved, the court bonds, it becomes really taxable items of the income that anybody has to invest which really has some tax liability, like what we're talking about, which is being sneakily not paid, because that's a system that's just being used for them to be able to not pay the tax, and yet you've been paying it behind the scenes. You're from your Federal Reserve account. These are the things that the Treasury and any nation wants people to correct, and this is what the reason is behind any enforcement and things that's like this, because those are the things which are supposed to be corrected. But you can see it's a massive condition, and how can anybody do the job right if you and I, we sit back, which we're the ones, it is an administrative council that sits above the Legislative Assembly, and this is the fourth estate, and it only can be activated because it has to be by your selection. It has to be from common people. It has to come from we the people. It can't come from anything else. You see? Yeah?
Yeah.
So ultimately, of course, every government issue and court issue really is there's a bill of exchange. There's some bill that's passed, the bill of exchange, and it's used for a whole range of things where some tax issue is and where possession is of some contractual tax rights and stuff. And so, these bills of exchange can be used. One can learn how to do things, or then otherwise then sort of promissory notes for things otherwise. But it's really notes that are really securities, and they're transferred or they're kept. And if they're kept, it's something contraband about that because it's a security. The notes are supposed to be transferred over with the titles, where a title goes over, you see. And all these cases are titles where people are, and they're all being bundled all together and transferred, and it all becomes contraband because it's illegal got, it's unlawful got. It didn't even follow proper statute because you've got people doing it that don't have their proper insurance, don't have the proper oath and this sort of thing, and they don't have the paperwork behind that, and that can be asked for, which wouldn't be provided, but it's evidence that there's omissions in the era of processing, like that one page said. Why? Because behind the scene, like what we said, those bonds, that all was created so that the job could be done. There was a bid, the performance, and a payment bond, which maybe we'll have time to talk a bit about, just to know what those three things are. But a pooling and service agreement goes on just like in real estate, and it's a cloud of all, of course, which are the notes, whichever really securitized by a trading house, and you've got public trading houses, and that is what's going on at all, government businesses and things being run more like this. And its reason is because if you understand where a war came, and by war a banking war was, and what was that? To cause a greater, higher control over the nation and to cause people to become more corporate and no longer have a voice. Yes. And that's communism. The people all over the world have fought against that, and this is not new. It's what's supposed to be more, that something should be causing the public, that's right, and that something should be in the private, and that's very important. But where notes can't be passed on because upon closure where anything was, and somebody signed off on some decision and said, okay, that's it. And so now you're sitting somewhere with somebody's asked you to have your nose turned to the left when that's barratry that's occurred, or legal battery as well, or lawful battery, medical battery is another sort of battery. So, and what's the ramifications? You see, it's extremely alarming because you've got currencies which is all very having to be disengorged. But that's something which should happen so that it's behind the scene, no hiccup can exist, because you and I, we own this and should bail this in, and that is positively inducted because it's credit that's owed us. So from ever, and today it should be from positive induction. And so these are things which our CLIPS movement is about. People could learn more about by going to jubbdavid.com. But you've got the buyer which never was able to understand what was not free and clear of encumbrances because some think was based upon a fraud, and now something was done behind the scene with IRS forms like the 1090s, the 1090A and E, and you've got an accommodation ever being done that's actually a transference of things, and you didn't give any consent to that, didn't know anything existed like that, didn't know there was a big profiting going on like that, didn't know that you could come in and select the venue yourself, and you just got run over because someone used some secret code behind the scene that you didn't know. You wouldn't have known what the jurisdiction was that would be shifted around to turn you into being a apparent criminal or something, wrongfully arrested, wrongfully put in prison, and having bridging boundary. It's treasonous acts because it's not right somebody would act upon another in a manner that's not given them their natural right, and they have done that as a pattern ongoing. It's truly a treasonous act, and that where is the enemy? We're the people sitting back looking at that, seeing it, never having done anything about it. How bad is that? Don't tell me that anybody else out there is responsible. Hell no. It's just so passing the buck. It's unbelievable. And could you correct something yourself? Yes. You could correct everything, and you could have your own matter dealt with and what have you, you see. So why shouldn't you do this as a process? It's so easy. Article 3 or Article 4, learn about how to do such. You're doing an administrative process, and now shouldn't Administrative Procedures Act, which is above the state legislative assembly of the state of New York or Victoria or Australia or wherever anybody is, the same. You have a legislative assembly, and you have who sits above that is a court, and they are to see that the trust is being administered properly. Well, could people see the trust administered properly? Hell no. Things can be sold out to someone who owns a nation and uses the nation itself as their business. And that's just communism outright. And you've got Article 4 and Article 3 courts, which truly should be enacted to help clear things up like this. So, do we want to do a little bit more, do you think? We could do another show or something, I don't know. Yes?
Oh, sure.
Today, yes? Yeah, okay, so let's see. We could, right, so give us another 5 minutes and we'll come back and give you a little bit more, mate. Okay, mate. Love you, mate. Oh, when we come back, actually, what can we talk about? I'm thinking of what should be. We're all talking about an adverse claim, an adverse counterclaim. And why? Well, because you've got lots of clogging stuff that's gone on, and it's so reasonable why these things should be controlled by Article 8, and Article 3 and Article 4. Why? Well, because you've got to have verifiedness. And we've got things going on where it's a security, investments, risks itself. It's truly disastrous because a lot of that stuff could be based upon things which it is on a dead man basic, statute. And after that, the system itself puts bundles and puts everything together, and that's clogs on cells. And it's like a business existing behind the scene to clean up what is being taken away from you because you don't know that you have a right to receive whatever was spent, to be given back to you. Basically, you really need just an account, that's it, and it takes care of you, all right, to a future moment, honest. And that's what we propose in positive inductive currency. So when we come back, right, we talk just a little bit about that clogging provisions and what provisions exist for stopping and blocking that sort of types of clogging types of conditions, and what would be the ramifications, which honest to God is immense, more for all sorts of foreign, meaning not outside the nation or not outside you, the living being, meaning foreign, and having corporate ownership and that having taken over everything, and then someone behind the scene owning that corporation privately. And this is the circumstance of things going on, which that's something which needs to be corrected, because you've got a monopoly, and how can you say anything is right? So your own administrative act, which does exist, that is above the state assembly where you are, is where we the people exist, and that this is the chain of command. Yes, so someone must learn about this, because everybody really is under the Magna Carta. So anyway, when we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit more about clogging provisions and things which exist that relate to protection and your insight into this, yes? And also your ability to be able to make it something which you're getting back something from it, and you're making an investment in the way you do your paperwork and gaining credit instead of not having ever thought about something like this. All right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, mate.
Yeah.
Love you, mate.
Thank you.
Okay, talk to you back in 5 minutes.
Sounds good. Talk to you.
Lukey, how you doing, mate?
Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
So, so we've really should do just a small section right where we are, because that one page has ramifications itself, but it really is about ramifications that is a metaphor, but more than a metaphor. It really is what the fact is that's going on. That's immense, really. That's the idea that you've got foreign ownership of things and control over the public section of everything, and that's sort of being wielded. So really, in the Path of Hollow Bones and in Jubb's Little Red Book, and where you could go to our site, jubbdavid.com, and people could learn more. But you've got the message really is how government really is only formed to protect your private property. Yes. And so who's really paying the pipe is really running the show, and that's to be returned back to us, you see. That's called Republic. And you've got laws which give you back the jointedness to what you had as your rights, and that's, in under the Uniform Commercial Code and 301. You've got words which have been used in the past to define government, and people in the past used the words like as Buddha in a time of such, and moments of time where cleric forms of civic forms, and cleric and civic forms are similar. And you've got Krishna certain, and Allah, and you've got Yahweh, and you've got all these words, and you've got the Massa word, which sort of comes along and word God comes from this, as good does. It's about doing good, supposed to be the good. For you and I, really, we can have a new social compact as a Republic of Peace, that we can select this, and that's what we're talking about, the fourth estate. That's chain of command that's above government. And so you and I really could visit and inspect to correct the things that's irregular, and regulatory agencies and things that really can't really have any swinging doors going on, which it does. And you've got lots of things where double oath sort of stuff is going on. Well, we talk a little bit about C.B. and what C.B. is. But we've got a vessel which you could really pour things into, and that's beauty in itself. And you could learn that the J.C. Quanta really is behind everything more, and in language, and things are supposed to add up. So the ramification for what we just talked about, being under dead man estate and private properties being taken because of it, is really immense. The ramifications are for foreign ownership where anyone is, and this should be stopped, because that's wrong of itself complete. Because you and I, government's only formed to protect private property. That's it. So if one's not influencing anyone, because you don't have to, because this is just common law and does it of itself, and the procedure of itself, like as a grand jury, just continues on, and it's not dependent upon anybody. You see, so it is important. Why? Well, because you need to ensure government and people and employees and people. You need to protect everybody, and you need to be about everybody, not one group or another. You need to really be focused on things more in a living sense, prudently, and discharging the charges. And this is the new reset when your lips move, otherwise lying about it. So you and I, we are the executor of our own affair, of course. We're the guardian of our own affairs. And how dare somebody else be such? This is your natural right to be, and the natural fiduciary of your own affair. And something is set up like dot armies, and the arm, it's a currency which is in a J.C. Quanta, and you've got this in a holofractal everywhere around the world. So where it begins, it it is, and it is what we own, all of us, you see. So a technology that exists to cause this to be given to everybody, it's our property. And so, you're getting rid of everything except like a consumer more based energy. And then you've got people being compensated, of course, because you've got costed hollows going on. But you've got personal knowledge, and this is what Article 3, Article 4 is about, and various degrees of article that relate to being living and verifiedness itself of any matter. And so Article 1 and Article 2 is very low-balled. Those are things which just relate to straight-out corporateness itself, and then a mixture, a bit of it, with common law inside it, and until you pop up to Article 3 or Article 4. Article 3 is above contract, looking at that, and Article 4 is really matters that relate to the actual procedure and process and things, and what the government is, where things are, which can be helped be corrected. Otherwise, you've got things run amiss, and if you ask anybody who's in charge, they're not going to have been able to tell you, like what we've just said here. They can't tell you that it's we the people, and they can't tell you it's the common enemy is, and that's the underestimation of how many stupid people exist in the world, and thinking that some sophistication happens out there, and it's not. This sophistication is within you. This is quorum sensing. That's a word which we use a lot. Quorum sensing. People hardly ever heard about that word. But even sustainableness is a word we used long before that was ever used. So it's like, look, all actually really does need to be bailed out. And this is the time now that it's moving into the age of Aquarius, you see. And this is the fourth estate. And it's forming around the earth. It's really your administrative process where you are on a single page with a sister help you with some procedure so that you can just get something cleared away and you can be relieved finally of what this matter is. And so at this moment, a lot of this is in the private, fully complete, and hasn't been put into the public. A lot of public is being used because it's being like human minerals, it's being mined for energy. And where a claim really was settled, you've got otherwise foreign ownership by the land and the state, and you've got the state of the state of the state, which is behind the process of the birth certificate and the way that's being used. And there's ways for you to be able to, get back your living status as a result, and by getting your birth certificate authenticated. So otherwise, things that we are really familiar with is how do you liquidate what exists about that, and what sort of paperwork could go behind something that makes this happen more correctly. Otherwise, it's referred to departments and goes and takes longer. But why should you not actually be able to use IRS forms and to be able to liquidate things? So those are things which, someone could learn more about. I mean, that's the 1099 OID original issue discount, which are all the principle on 1096s and 1040s and 1040Vs and these IRS forms, and followed by 8281s, which identifies who the issuer is, who gave that currency. So basically what we're talking about, look, people behind the scene, they used this account, yes? Good. Okay. You could see they did. And now, have you used it? No. Why not? Okay, this is called consideration. Okay? You must be given consideration, all right? Now, where you weren't given consideration, now you've really got what this picture is, which really is to do with clogging and provisions and things having gone on, and what is a security ultimate, and it goes way past 9 months before any maturity years and things. And so you have to have corrected these things, because otherwise it's disastrous. And so what's going on with property is immense, like I said, and needs to be corrected quickly. So where anyone is, if it's under a dead trust, how could anyone have any express judgment, which was seen to be settled where anything was, where something was delinquent when the conditions existed that already upon the notes that existed, everything was paid for, and looking behind the scene, you're seeing that many things have been paid for many, many, many times over, like people's houses, their mortgages and things. Nobody is necessarily looking into what that is, but you only have to make a small claim about something simple, and you can help correct everything. But why shouldn't somebody correct the things where something is going on and take over to help fix things up, which you can with a letter, you see. So it's really where something is in default, it's because under common law, which we have, and you're before any officer of the law of the trust, they're under oath to you and I, and so you have a right to be able to express how that trust is carried out, and how come somebody doesn't do that, which you should and could, and that's somebody's insight into the writing of a letter like what we have there, which is the front page, which if somebody listens to the first program here, they're learning that this is really about winning your case and getting something cleared away straight away, you see. And by not having any argument and by being in honour and being honourable, right, and clearing things up in the private. So you've got every word that's used has a physiology, doesn't it? And clogging, you can feel it, don't you? Something gets clogged. What does that mean? It means that lots of things occurred over the top and overlaid, and something occurred because of something else. And now suddenly, if something is not correct in the whole condition, you've got things, and how do you extract that piece out of it? You see, yes? And this is what's going on with people's bonds, where clogging provisions exist, and those clogging extinguishes someone's equity for redemption. And what does that mean? It means you've got things going on where something is being traded, and how can you extract anything out of that? You see, and so this is really a challenge, and you'd be cleared away. They don't want that issue, but which should be dealt with, like I said, by the Legislative Assembly, above the Administrative Council that sits above the Legislative Assembly, which is we're the people. And how does that happen? By people selecting that themselves. That's right. It only comes about by that. You can't have any conflicted interest. It wouldn't be common practice that you did. And that's how these things arise, and everything does. So everything is under Magna Carta. But if you and I, we have a right to redeem. Yes, we do. You have a right to get back what was existed for you. Are you interested to know, to become more, how to help in the private? Okay, well, some people are. You could be learning how to become more a private awakening in general. And because court bonds that's existed, an investment contract, you've got an 8281, and you've got various other types of forms there with the IRS that relate to this, because people should read the instructions a bit, as everybody should, to become more familiar, and you're really familiar with terms, and every term that you use should be able to be asked to be able to define what this is. So an 8281 really is the issuer. Okay, and you are the issuer, all right, of whatever you've done. So you're using a form of the IRS forms, and you're using those forms to help liquidate the debt much faster. So if we go back to 1951, you're seeing laws passed under Title 26, and you've got Section 28 of this, and also Section 514, which all relate to your power of appointment. It's the Power of Appointment Act of 1951. In other words, you have the power to be able to appoint anyone in the trust, which you can, okay? And so you should, in fact. And one can learn who to appoint. So this letter really, just this one letter, is appointing, you see, so it's directing things. And there's degrees in how you might do this, you see, so because it's very powerful. So you have to be careful who you're appointing things to have this happen for you, because you're getting some matter cleared away. So you've got you're the donor. That's what that means, and you've got the total power of who you want to nominate as a nominee. That's in the relation of the courthouse, where you've got Class 5 gift and estate taxes that's existed, and transfer taxes, and state tax on currencies that can have been by profit earned, and you're the only one who has a right to be able to exercise who you would give your donation to, and so because of it, you've got a right to appoint whoever it is there. You see, because of this. I'm just pointing out what the background is behind your ability to be able to appoint. And you can use Form 56 to be able to do that from the IRS. So these are things which I learned over some time, and might I have perhaps 30,000 hours of work inside this? Probably, yes. I'd say so.
Wow.
And so what I'm speaking to you is just 30,000 hours that's behind this of research. So, somebody can take a shortcut for sure. But anyway, if one's looking more, if you look, you can see in the IRS processing manual, like if you look, I think in the 216 one, which I remember looking at, that you've got the 1096 and 1040s and the 1099s, the W2s and W4s. Those all are gift and state taxed forms, which show you that you're the donor of, meaning that you're the principal of some matter. So somebody could look at things, and it's all of a sudden the whole thing comes to be aware to you, which it did for me over a moment of time for me to become fully aware how the whole picture works. But when somebody doesn't sort of want something back, well, they didn't report anything on the 1040 form. But if you want the money back, because that's money that you spent, you want that money back. That's like your coat check, you see. So there's various forms. What does that mean? It means that anything that you spent there, you gave them, they spent, that's got to be paid back to you. It's got to be put back into your bank account. It'll come back into your bank account where it is when you set your bank account up properly, okay? Because it has to be outside the courts. You have to just be able to know what that means. That's a private bank account. You've organised it to be more so. So it's really you, the private being, and how you operate where the public is, and organise the public for yourself. So it's a generation.
Nice.
You've got lots of taxes which going on with those forms, and those are all things which you can have been paying, you see, and that's money that should be owed back to your account, because that was money that would have been taken out of your account. And what are those? There are generation taxes, there's skipping taxes, there's gift taxes, there's wow. So, you've really got a reason for making this into a counterclaim. That's what I'm saying behind the scene. Mm-hmm. Is evidence why you should not do your business in a manner that you're growing the credit that you have. So there's $3 million worth of credit for everyone, nice. There for you to use. You see, there's 3,500,000 more, and many just know that, and so they start their business because they are using this as It's collateral that they have.
Whoa.
So when you start or you do something, most people, they're not understanding money mechanics whatsoever, you see, right? And so you don't know what a loyal title is, or you don't know that every dead man thing you ever did you don't own, really. No, you don't. But you could by doing simple things, because you've got a perfected. You're the owner of a perfected title. So you've got thousands of dollars in accounts that is there for you, but you don't use it. And when you don't, what happens with that? That gets traded out too. Because it's given to you. It's there. And if you don't use it, someone else does. Yes? So, see, it's really problematic where things are just as capitalism is itself. It's really supposed to be a republic proper. But the 1099A and various things people could learn how to use. And you're using Form 56 to help you. And then you're using a 1098 and 8281, which those all are showing who the principal is, because you've got somebody who could be doing anything, and they could present a bill, and they could draw up a bill, and they could do that before anything out of the business. You see, by understanding the money mechanic that's behind the scene. So all I want to say is, look, the ramifications is immense. That you've got a lot of foreign ownership that could just come in, and it does, and you've got that as an asymmetric warfare that's going on. And wouldn't you say the whole lot of stupidity is because why? You and I were not performing our duty like we should. You see, yes, and you've got contraband for sure. You've got issues which relate to people having things like the court bonds, holding on to stuff, and so that's the reason why that's contraband. Because it's illegal and being paid onward past the point, and no one knowing how bad that is. So special drawing rights is what you have where anybody is, and to provide currency for exchange where something is. And in a future moment, that's actually how all things work. And so you're not got a debt system, and tax you don't have because you're owning the system instead. So could people wake up a bit more to what this new epoch is that we're talking about? Because all our creditors, basically, you've got 1099A, B, and C's, and it shows you this. If you're understanding it, you could learn how to come to be more a banker yourself. And so that was something very interesting to me a long time ago. I wanted to understand banking itself. When people asked me when I was even young, they said, what do I want to do? They thought it was funny, and I said I wanted to be a banker. And they thought they never had heard anything about it. But I heard, if you know how money is and you study money, it's what money is makes money, doesn't it? Yes, it does. It's like health makes health. Right. But studying sickness, that's not going to make health. The bankers may be doing it right, but medicine they're not. Okay, but you've got to stay present more, where you've got various sections that we could talk a little bit and things about coming up a little bit more in our program and things that we do. But you've got an original issue discount, which shows you're the principal as the instrument, where you're writing a check. It's the absolute same. It's a bill which really has a cusp that's connected and can't be accessed except you're the creditor, and it can only be as some refund is existed, and so you're always paying to the order. What does that mean? It means that means you're the principal. That's right. So you're paying to the order on that page, to the magistrate or to the prosecutor, charged with the subset of whatever that currency is that's needing to be paid, and that's credited to your account, you see, yes, that you put there. And so you're learning how to do things more in the private yourself, and not have had somebody else to do that for you, and then get you into a lot of tricked out stuff. the IRS and forms that you could use, and one really learns how to use these forms. Again, of course, one knows learn how to use the 1040 and the 1040V, which is your claim check or someone's claim check for something, because they've spent money on something, because they had something, they spent money on themselves, and you could be giving them a voucher. You've got a 1096, which really is showing you who's the owner and issuer of the currency, and the 8281 is the same, and you've got Form 56, which is like what we said, it's a power of appointment that we've just been going over here, and you've got money, which is really being used, which hasn't been noted, we've been talking about it, and you've got a 1040, which is letting you know that anything that was spent out there, you've got a claim check on, and that can be coming back to you. You could be using this, your secured party creditor more sense of being in the private, and so you're taking something off the calendar. So in that front page, it just, or the work, it says that this is done, it's finished, you've got to cancel it. Yes? And so what happens with that? Anything. It's off the calendar, okay? Why? Because you don't have a contract. You don't need a contract. Someone has to contract to you. Yes, you see, so there's a way to do it. When you look at how this work is done, it's done in a manner that you've not had to contract, you see. But what goes on where somebody does something otherwise is a massive double dipping going on behind the scenes. Things get paid out many, many more times over because you don't ever bother to see and look behind what's going on. But the 8281 is a mandatory condition, like where all the paperwork is that you're putting, and it's like, where is your authority? That's what I was saying, like the ramifications are immense for the foreign ownership otherwise, like you're saying, where is your authority? Yes, and so that's what you're doing, where you're claiming this, we the people. You've really, otherwise, where work is put, it's a conditional acceptance upon like some payment on demand, and that all the fees and the costs are all put under the special appearance bond that you've got asked for that to have been written up for you, so that everything is, the charges are dismissed, and maybe even dismissed with prejudice, and discharged, so that you could take the calendar or take something back where it should be. You're right, because something could have gone on like what we talked about beforehand, where the nature of the situation wasn't considered. So you and I, we are the court where anything is, and everything should be more verified, where the venue is really more from the land, and this is where your common law rights are, and then jurisdiction is all that relates to what this is. It's really the nature and the cause of things versus whatever is dead after that, which is some cause and effect, which is your thinking, and not getting into that because you don't have to. You're looking at the nature and seeing that a defense exists where you are. So you're clearing away prejudice, and you're clearing away, and you're asking to take judicial note. What's that mean? It means, hey, take note of what this is. There's some order of import, because you're not contracting where this is at all. And why? Well, because you have the authority to make the presentment. You're doing it on your own self. You're doing it and you're giving it to someone. That's you. So you need a contract to do that? No, you don't. So you're asking, where is your authority? That's the issue. That if you're feeling the kingship, feeling as the king does, which you should, in common law, you're supposed to be feeling like the king does. Well, you're looking at the whole thing and you're thinking, damn, no, this needs to be corrected because your credit's being spent wrong. See? No, you need to correct that. And can you look and see plenty of examples of this thing going on? Absolutely you can. Why? Because the fourth estate has never been active. God bloody help us. It's truly disastrous. That is the common enemy, please. Please not look in the papers and everywhere or in the news or in the wherever anybody does look for written material or even screens and stuff. You have to look for your own self within and find it where the inner is like the outer. And that's now you're right. See, you're coming from what's correct. One can exhibit can somebody exhibit the instrument of whatever the estimate is of how much is owed? Of course they can't. Something has to be done behind the scene. And you're allowing for this in this process, you see. There's the way for somebody to do things that you could understand things. You can take charge of the matter more so something is discharged. And slow but sure, somebody learns these things, mate, and they sort of really become a page, a private awakening general, sir. I think that
sounds good.
We've done a few shows today. I think you're going to put them out. I could just only thinking in my mind. I know that we should at some point we will talk, and we should do a show maybe tomorrow if you love or whatever. But we could really do a show that more relates to your instrument of title and what you write is and things, and what really is an adverse claim. We can talk a little bit more about what that is and what your rights are, where things are, because that's just evidence that's behind this front page more. You've really got a counterclaim, and it's because there's a holding of contraband. Well, we should talk a little bit more about that. And then if it came about from some confessed judgment, which was under a dead man statute, that's ridiculous. It's just off the wall. And then you've got a securities after this. It's just like, honest to God, it's contraband beyond belief, because there's no way that any of that could have happened of itself. I'm just looking at what the matter is, that if you look at the larger matter, okay, not just, hey, you need to be free, clear away, and this back with your family or something. We could talk a bit more and get maybe these things we could just cover. And so you've got some more sections and things that relate to stuff really. And I think we just like went over the power of appointment. So I can think we could talk a little bit more about this. And basically, you've got a remedy where you are, and I'm sharing with you your remedy, okay, where you are. And that's your knowledge of being able to activate everything in the private, okay? Amazing. Yeah. And so what is your instrument of title? Yes? In your iOS forms or anything you do? Yes, in this paperwork I could share with you what that is. And this is evident. It's so very important. Why? Most people are missing it. Why? Well, because people doesn't want to give that to you. Why? Because it's in the private. It's not in the public. But the more, somebody comes to learn something, well, if they're doing it correct, okay, because otherwise they'll put something there to block and stop stuff because you're doing it something wrong in a process. But somebody should learn how to do things properly. And if you do, you could liquidate things properly by using the proper IRS forms, and that helps them, and that helps you, that helps us at this moment where all of us are, okay?
Oh, right on.
Yeah. So, anyway, I wonder about everything. Of course, super consciousness is really more where awareness is, where you're able to use the vestibular sense, which is your sense of direction and your spatial orientation of locus of control, and where is that coming from, and how balance comes to be, because I will become more aware of the vestibular sense, which is your sense of balance. So forward, back, up, down, the vestibular words. Anyway, somebody could learn more about how to use the senses, and why should you be not really good at joining things together and writing something proper, yes, and doing something to have a proper effect of itself, yes? And so I personally feel that somebody knows there's a therapeutic behind everything. That's really great. Anyway, love you, mate, and love to everybody tuning in. And I've got some great feedback from people, incredible from the shows and stuff. So I know people are appreciating what you're putting together for people. Yes?
Oh, Dr.
Behind the
Jubb,
scenes.
I really feel, honored that you come on my channel, and thank you so much for everything.
Yes, mate. Anyway, love you. And
God
make
bless.
sure that you're really putting some good things in there for people so they can be eating their meal while they're listening to this, because many of these things you have to listen back 2, 3, 4 times, because something is going on, honest to God, that's very deep for you, which is really a math. And it is what smart contract comes to be from a JC contract in a future moment. All right? In the way language is. Okay?
Great.
Love you, mate. See you,
Same
mate.
here.
Love you, mate. Catch up tomorrow,
Thanks
mate.
again. Looking forward
All
to
right.
it. Okay. Good night,
Bye.
Dr. Jubb.